Be me, name is Robert. 54 years old. Electrician for 30 years. Own a small electrical contracting business. Married to my wife Linda for 28 years. We have 2 kids, Grace, who's 26, and her younger brother Tyler, who's 22. Tyler's finishing up trade school. Wants to join my business. Good kid, hardworking, no drama. Grace is a different story. She graduated college 4 years ago with a gender studies degree. Couldn't find a job in her field, shocking I know. So she became a content creator instead. That's what they call it now, content creator. Back in my day we called it unemployed. But I try to be supportive. Grace lives at home because rent is too expensive. Doesn't pay for anything, we cover food, utilities, everything. Her mother says she's finding herself. I say she's 26 and should have found herself by now. But I keep that to myself mostly. Grace's content is all about feminism and empowerment. She has about 80,000 followers on social media. Posts videos about patriarchy, toxic masculinity, male privilege. How women are oppressed by the system men created. How fathers raise daughters to be submissive. How traditional families are tools of control. I watch some of her videos and barely recognize my own daughter. She talks like she grew up in some oppressive household. Like I was some tyrant who controlled her every move. Meanwhile, she had piano lessons, soccer, dance classes. Got a car at 17, college fully paid by me and Linda. Never worked a real job in her life. But online she's a victim of the patriarchy. The patriarchy that bought her an iPhone and pays her car insurance. I try not to let it bother me. Linda says it's just her generation, they're all like this. I say not all of them, Tyler's not like this. She says boys are different. I say that's kind of sexist, isn't it? She doesn't find that funny. Week after week Grace posts her content. Gets more followers, gets some brand deals. Companies send her free stuff to promote. Makeup, clothes, supplements, whatever. She calls it her business. I call it getting free stuff for complaining online. But I keep that to myself too. One day I'm scrolling and see one of her videos blow up. Title is "My Dad Represents Everything Wrong with Traditional Masculinity." I click on it and my blood pressure rises. She's talking about how I raised her with patriarchal expectations. How I wanted her to be feminine and domestic. How I represent the old guard that feminism is fighting against. How she had to unlearn everything I taught her. I'm sitting there watching this thinking, what the hell? I never told her to be domestic. She can't even cook. I never pushed feminine expectations. I took her to baseball games. I paid for her college so she could be independent. And this is the thanks I get. A video calling me a symbol of oppression. The video has 500,000 views. Comments are full of people saying her dad sounds toxic. Poor girl. Glad she broke free. Patriarchy really damages daughters. I want to throw my phone across the room. But I take a deep breath and calm down. That night at dinner, I don't mention the video. Grace is on her phone the whole time anyway. Typing away, probably responding to comments. Comments from strangers who think I'm a monster. Linda made pot roast, one of my favorites. Grace picks at it and says she's thinking about going vegan. For ethical reasons, she says. I ask if she's going to buy her own groceries then. She says no, she'll just eat the vegan stuff we have. We don't have vegan stuff. So that means Linda has to buy special groceries for her. Linda says, of course, honey, I'll pick some things up. I don't say anything, just eat my pot roast. The oppressive patriarchal pot roast. Week later, Grace posts another video. This one is about how men don't do enough housework. How women are expected to clean and cook. How the domestic labor gap is a feminist issue. I watch it and laugh out loud. Grace has never done a chore in this house without being asked 5 times. Her room looks like a tornado hit it. She leaves dishes in the sink for days. Linda does all her laundry because Grace says she's too busy. Too busy making videos about how women do all the housework. The irony is completely lost on her. I show the video to Tyler when he comes home. He watches it and just shakes his head. says Grace lives in a fantasy world. I tell him not to say that to her. It'll start a fight. He says he knows. He just avoids her completely now. Says her whole personality is being a victim online. I can't argue with that. Month goes by and Grace's channel keeps growing. She's at 100,000 followers now. Gets invited to some podcast to talk about feminism. She's so excited, tells us at dinner. I say congratulations, that's a big opportunity. She says thanks, then adds, I might talk about my upbringing and how I overcame it. Linda asks what that means. Grace says, the traditional household, the gender roles. How I had to deprogram myself from patriarchal conditioning. I put my fork down. Ask her what patriarchal conditioning she's talking about. She says, the expectations, the environment. I say, what expectations did I put on you, Grace? She gets uncomfortable, says it's not about specific things. It's about the overall system and structure. I ask what system, this house, the one I built and pay for. She says, see, this is what I mean, you're getting defensive. I say I'm getting defensive because you're lying about me online. She says she's not lying. She's sharing her truth. I say your truth is that I'm some oppressive patriarch. When I've given you everything and asked for nothing. She says I wouldn't understand because I benefit from the system. I say the system where I work 50 hours a week. So you can live here for free and make videos calling me toxic. Linda tries to calm things down. Says let's not fight. We're a family. Grace says this is exactly the problem. Women always have to be peacemakers. Because men can't control their emotions. I laugh and say I'm controlling my emotions pretty well right now. Considering my daughter makes money calling me a bad father. Grace stands up and says she's not hungry anymore. Goes to her room and slams the door. Linda sighs and says I was too hard on her. I say I was honest with her. There's a difference. 2 days later, Grace does the podcast. I don't listen live, but someone sends me a clip. She's talking about growing up with a father who embodied toxic masculinity. How he never validated her emotions. How he expected her to be grateful instead of critical. How she had to find her voice despite her upbringing. The host is nodding along saying how brave she is. I listen to this and something breaks inside me. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just tired. Tired of being the villain in her story. When all I did was love her and provide for her. That night, I make a decision. I'm done being silent. Grace comes home late from some event. I'm sitting in the living room waiting for her. She sees me and immediately gets defensive. Says, what now? I say, sit down. We need to talk. She sighs but sits down. I pull out my phone and show her the podcast clip. Ask if she really believes this stuff. She says it's her perspective, her lived experience. I say, okay, let's talk about your lived experience. I pull out a folder I've prepared. She asks what that is. I say receipts. First document, her college tuition payments. 4 years, paid in full, no student loans. $120,000 total from the oppressive patriarchy. Second document, her car purchase. Bought her a Honda when she turned 17. Paid for insurance every month since then. Third document, household expenses. Estimated cost of her living here rent-free for 4 years. Food, utilities, internet she uses for her content. About $30,000 in support since she graduated. She's staring at the papers. I say your lived experience costs me about $180,000. Is that the patriarchy you're fighting against? She says money isn't everything. I say you're right. Let's talk about time. Every soccer game I went to, every recital, every school play. Exposed to toxic masculinity in the front row, apparently. Every time you got sick, I stayed home from work. Every nightmare, I was the one who came to your room. Every time you needed anything, I was there. And your lived experience is that I'm the problem. She's quiet now. I continue. You make content about how men don't do housework. When have you ever done housework here? Your mother does your laundry. Your mother cooks your meals. I mow the lawn, fix everything that breaks, pay every bill. But I represent the patriarchy that oppresses women. She starts to say something, but I'm not done. You talk about financial independence and empowerment. You're 26 years old living in your childhood bedroom. Every dollar you make from your content, you spend on clothes and brunch with your friends. You've never paid a bill in your life, but you lecture people online about the system. What system, Grace? The one that lets you be a professional victim. She's got tears in her eyes now. Says I don't understand her work. I say I understand it perfectly. You take the comfortable life I gave you and use it to pretend you're oppressed. Because oppression gets clicks, victimhood gets followers, and actually being grateful doesn't go viral. She says that's not fair. I say none of this is fair. I worked my whole life to give you opportunities, and you turn those opportunities into a platform to trash me. You told 100,000 people I'm a toxic patriarch, when the worst thing I ever did was love you too much and expect nothing in return. She's crying now, says she never meant to hurt me. I say intent doesn't matter, impact does. Isn't that what your generation says? She looks down. I say I'm going to give you a choice, Grace. You can keep making your content, saying whatever you want, but you're going to do it from your own apartment that you pay for with your own money. Or you can stay here, but you're going to stop lying about this family online. And you're going to start contributing like an adult. Chores, groceries, something toward rent. And maybe some respect for the people who raised you. She asks if I'm kicking her out. I say I'm giving you options. Real independence, the kind you talk about. Or accountability, the kind you avoid. Your choice. She sits there for a long time. Finally says she needs to think. I say take all the time you need. But while you're thinking, maybe watch your own content and ask yourself, would you work 50 hours a week to support someone who talks about you like that? I leave her in the living room and go to bed. Linda asks how it went. I say I said what I needed to say. She asks if Grace is okay. I say she's going to have to figure that out herself. That's what independence actually looks like. Next few days, Grace is quiet. Doesn't post any new content. Stays in her room a lot. I don't push, let her process. Week later, she comes to me. Says she's been thinking about what I said. Says she watched some of her old videos. Saw them differently this time. Says she got caught up in the algorithm. The more extreme the take, the more views. The more she played the victim, the more followers. It became a performance, and she lost track of reality. I ask if that's an apology. She says yes, she's sorry. Sorry for the videos, sorry for the podcast. Sorry for taking everything for granted. I say apology accepted. But words are easy. Actions matter. She nods and says she knows. Says she wants to stay, but she'll contribute. Get a real job, pay rent, do chores. And change the kind of content she makes. I say that's all I wanted. Not perfection, just honesty and effort. She hugs me, and it's the first real hug in years. Not a performance, not for content. Just a daughter hugging her dad. Month later, Grace has a part-time job at a marketing agency. Entry level, but it's real work with a real paycheck. She pays $400 a month rent, does her own laundry. Cooks dinner once a week, badly, but she's trying. Her content has changed too. Less about patriarchy and oppression. More about personal growth and accountability. Lost about 20,000 followers who wanted the outrage content. But she says she's okay with that. Says quality over quantity. I don't really understand influencer stuff. But I understand my daughter is finally growing up. 6 months later, Tyler officially joins my business. Grace comes to the small celebration dinner. She makes a toast to family and second chances. Thanks me and Linda for not giving up on her. I say that's what parents do. Even patriarchal ones, apparently. She laughs and says she had that coming. Tyler says, yeah, you really did. Linda says, okay, enough. Let's eat. Family dinners are different now. Grace actually participates instead of being on her phone. Asks about my work, tells us about hers. It's not perfect, but it's real. Year later, Grace moves into her own apartment. First time living independently at 27. A late bloomer, but better late than never. She's still making content, but it's different. Made a video recently called How I Was the Problem. Talked about blaming her dad for things that weren't his fault. About confusing comfort with oppression. About how real empowerment is accountability, not victimhood. Video got mixed reactions. Some people said she sold out. Others said she finally grew up. She said the comments don't bother her anymore. She knows what's true now. I watched the video and felt proud. Not because she praised me, but because she was finally honest. With herself and with her audience. That's all I ever wanted. Not a perfect daughter, not constant gratitude. Just honesty and accountability. The same things I'd want from anyone. Ran into one of her old followers once. Someone who recognized me from Grace's early content. They said, "You're the toxic dad, aren't you?" I said I'm the dad who paid for everything while being called toxic. Does that count? They didn't have a response. I just smiled and walked away. Don't need validation from strangers on the internet. Got something better. A daughter who finally sees clearly. And a family that's stronger for the hard conversations. Anyway, that's the story of how my feminist influencer daughter built a platform calling me a symbol of patriarchal oppression. While living in my house, eating my food, spending my money. Never paid a bill. Never did a chore. But had plenty of opinions about male privilege. Until her dad sat her down with receipts. And asked her to match her actions to her words. Turns out the patriarchy was funding her revolution. And when the funding came with conditions, she had to decide what independence really meant. She chose accountability over victimhood, growth over grievance, reality over performance. And that's the most empowering thing she's ever done. Not that she'll make a video about it. Some lessons are just for family.